as we talk about a life in Cuba after Fidel is Leslie Balog. She's Cuba and South America coordinator for Global Exchange. She's been arranging tours to Cuba since 1993. She has lived in Cuba for 20 years. She has even worked for Radio Cuba, the island's international radio station. Leslie Balog, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
To have you here with us, and you arrange tours to Cuba. Well, how do I get on one of these tours since the United States government says, Gary, you're not allowed to travel to Cuba?
Well, Global Exchange is a human rights organization, and as you mentioned, we've been sending tours to Cuba actually since 1989. It used to be that the U.S. government allowed people-to-people and educational tours, but since 2004, the government stopped all that, and the only way that you can go is by being a professional, doing professional research in your field, or being a journalist or a graduate student doing professional research. So what we do is we have a series of delegations that we send focusing on education, healthcare, culture, and in order to go, each person has to individually qualify. So in other words, you're a journalist, so I might be sending a group of journalists to Cuba. If you're a full-time journalist, then you can go if you're doing professional research. But you can't go just to get to know the Cuban people or to go to the film festival, for example, like we used to do, or go to the Caribbean Festival in Santiago, or music festivals, or any other cultural kind of thing.
So when I go there with you to Cuba, do I have a minder with me? Can I break off on my own? Can I see things the way I want to see them, or is it highly controlled by the Cuban government?
No, the groups have never been highly controlled by the Cuban government. Actually, the groups are more controlled now by the U.S. Treasury Department, because the U.S. Treasury Department says that, first of all, as I said, you have to be a professional doing professional research in your field, and secondly, to meet the qualifications, you have to do at least 40 hours of research. So we make the programs based on that. So we put in at least 40 hours of research, and the rest of the time you can do whatever you want. You can go off at night, you can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. It used to be that if you came with us, you could break off anytime you wanted, just on your own, and go anywhere you wanted, and even go to another city, whatever. But as I said, the U.S. Treasury Department now controls that. In fact, we used to have high school students, high school delegations, bicycle tours, all kinds of things, and the U.S. Treasury Department put a stop to that. Now you have to be at least 18 years old, and undergraduates cannot go unless they go for a course of study from a licensed university for at least 10 weeks. So that's pretty much cut out university students, most of them. And so you have to be at least a graduate student or working full-time.
Well, what if I went with you with a group of journalists to Cuba and decided to do this show from Cuba? Would there be a restriction?
Well, that's interesting, because we have had several journalists who have made arrangements to do just that. As you mentioned, I worked at Radio Havana, Cuba, and in our studios, at least 3 times, we had U.S. journalists doing their shows where they had call-ins and everything. And it was very, very interesting. And no, there weren't any restrictions. The only thing is, of course, I had to get permission, but it was never denied. We were only asked 3 times, and all 3 times we got permission. Well, actually, the permission was by my radio station, so, just to use the studio.
Could I go to Guantanamo Bay on a boat and demand medical attention for my friends who are suffering from 9/11 and bring out along a film crew? I think that'd be a great thing to do. It's an original idea. I shouldn't have mentioned it on the air, because somebody else might pick up on it and run with it. So, Leslie Balog, what is going to happen now in Cuba now that the old man has stepped down? First question is, is he? I would think, I'm obviously not an expert. You are, but I would think he would not be officially. Of course, he unofficially turned over the reins of powers in several years ago, but when he became ill. But I would think that this would not be happening if there were not an indication that he's pretty close to meeting his maker.
Well, that's something that you and I can't really know. Um, he's 81. He'll be 82 in the summer. He himself said that the reason he's stepping down is because he doesn't have the physical wherewithal to keep up with the job. He's been out of circulation for a year and a half, and certainly anybody who knows Fidel Castro knows that if he's out of circulation, if he doesn't appear on television, then yes, indeed, he must be quite ill. And he has said that himself. So that's what he said. Physically, he just can't keep up with the work anymore. He's been writing a regular column. He writes several times a month or more, at least probably once a week, a commentary that goes out in the Communist Party newspaper. When he was on the job, the man worked, by all accounts, something like 20 hours a day. He could pop up at any time, anywhere, all around the island, and he was constantly on the move. And whenever anybody would see him in the car, he would be reading. So he was a man who was legendary for the amount of work that he did and the few hours that he slept. So I think it just finally it took its toll on him, and he can't do it anymore. Now, who knows how much longer he'll live? I don't know what he has. I know that he says he's better, and he writes a lot. That's all I can say.
Oh, I heard that he decided that he would step down the day that Bill Clinton